Welcome to English Podcast. Subscribe our channel for more update.
So maybe you've been scrolling through those, picture-perfect Instagram feeds from expats living their best lives abroad.
Yeah, the ones that look amazing.
Exactly. Or maybe you're actually trying to figure out a new bus system while juggling Duolingo right now.
Right.
Either way, you're probably curious about what it really takes to live in another country, maybe pick up the language. Well, think of this as your fast track. We're going beyond the glossy pictures to the real stuff, the challenges, the surprises.
Absolutely. We really dug into this great conversation from the English Fluency Talks show.
Right.
And we're focusing on Daniel. He's originally from the UK, but he's been living in Germany for, almost 4 years now?
Yeah, nearly 4 years.
And his perspective is just really honest. It kind of cuts through all the hype, gives you a proper feel for the ups and downs of moving somewhere new and learning the language.
So our mission here really is to pull out the key takeaways from Daniel's story for you. We want to get past the surface level stuff and figure out, okay, how do you actually adapt to a new culture? How do you get past those roadblocks?
Now, what about the personal growth side of things?
Yes. And obviously some solid advice on learning the language too.
Okay, so where should we start? His actual move.
Yeah, let's do that. So Daniel moved to Germany back in 2021. He just finished university in London.
Right.
And it was partly a job opportunity, but also he wanted to actually use the German he'd learned.
Makes sense. And it sounds like he pretty quickly ran into some culture shock.
Oh, definitely. He talked about public transport in Berlin.
Yes. What was it?
Well, compared to the UK, where you might have a bit of a casual chat with someone on the train or bus.
Yeah, sometimes.
In Berlin, apparently it's much quieter, more reserved. People keep to themselves.
Okay. And that might seem like a small thing, but it points to something bigger, right?
Totally. It's about those subtle, unwritten social rules. They're not always these huge, obvious cultural differences.
No, often it's the little everyday interactions that feel different. And figuring out those microcultures, well, that's kind of key to feeling like you fit in, isn't it?
It really is. Those unspoken expectations can definitely throw you off balance.
Yeah.
And for Daniel, beyond the quiet trains, a really big struggle early on was just feeling like an outsider.
Because of the language barrier.
Exactly. His German wasn't fluent yet, and think about how that affects, basic things. Going to the doctor, dealing with official forms.
Oh, yeah. That stuff's intimidating even in your own language sometimes.
Right. So doing it in a language you're still learning adds a whole layer of stress.
And that brings up a really important point, I think, for anyone thinking about moving abroad. It's not just the practical stuff, it's the emotional side.
Definitely.
Like, how ready are you for that feeling when you just can't quite express yourself properly? And Daniel was really open about homesickness, too.
Yeah, missing friends, family, the familiar stuff.
It's so easy to get caught up in the excitement of it all, the adventure. But leaving your support network behind, that's a big deal. And maybe something people, underestimate.
You often hear about that honeymoon period when everything's new and exciting.
Right, and then reality kind of bites.
Yeah.
The frustration sets in as you deal with the day-to-day challenges and different culture. Daniel's early days sound a bit like that pattern.
Okay, so those are the early hurdles. The language gap, the homesickness, the quiet trains.
Yeah.
But things did get better. He mentioned a kind of turning point, didn't he? Around the 6-month mark.
Yeah, it wasn't like a sudden switch, more of a gradual shift.
It changed.
Well, a few things, it seems. He started making friends, which is huge.
Both locals and other expats.
Yeah, a mix. And also, crucially, his German improved.
Ah, okay.
So those everyday tasks, like the doctor's visits we mentioned, they just became less stressful, less daunting.
That makes a massive difference to your overall feeling, I bet.
Totally. And if you look at the bigger picture here, Daniel's experience really highlights how important it is to, actively engage.
Right. You can't just sit back and wait for things to happen.
Exactly. Making an effort to meet people, to practice the language.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just practical, it's tied up with your emotional well-being,
Yeah.
your ability to actually feel settled.
And he talked about a mindset shift too, didn't he? Like starting to see cultural differences not as problems, but as
Learning opportunities.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That shift from frustration to curiosity or acceptance, maybe, that seems like a really key moment in adapting successfully.
Yeah, definitely. And that naturally leads into the whole personal growth aspect.
Which is often a big motivator for people moving abroad in the first place.
For sure. And Daniel really pinpointed some areas where he felt he'd changed. He talked about becoming more adaptable,
Makes sense. You have to be.
more independent, more open-minded, even a better problem solver.
Well, yeah, because you're constantly facing new situations, right?
Yeah.
Things you haven't encountered before. You have to figure things out.
Yeah.
You're building resilience, basically.
It's like this constant learning cycle he described.
Mm-hmm. It's way more than just learning vocabulary lists.
Oh, yeah.
It's understanding whole new systems, figuring out how relationships work in a different cultural context, just getting comfortable with uncertainty.
Right. Which can be uncomfortable, but also really enriching.
Exactly. It taps into that desire we all have for, growth and seeing things from a new angle. It leads to some serious self-discovery sometimes.
Okay, so let's talk about the language learning piece specifically, because that's relevant for so many people, whether they move abroad or not. Daniel had some really interesting reflections, especially on how learning German himself gave him more empathy for English learners.
Seeing it from the other side.
Yeah, and his big realization, his sort of core takeaway, was that fluency. It's not about being perfect.
That's a good point.
It's about communication. Can you get your message across? Can you understand others? That's what matters.
Not about having flawless grammar every single time.
Exactly. Which is pretty encouraging, I think.
Definitely. And he also mentioned the link between language and culture, which we touched on earlier.
Right, they're intertwined.
You can learn the rules, the words, but really getting a language often means understanding the culture behind it,
Yeah.
how people use it in real life.
Yeah. And his experience also really hammered home the need for patience.
Oh, absolutely. Language learning isn't usually a quick fix.
No, it's a journey, right? Ups and downs. You need to stick with it. That's a really vital message, I think.
For sure.
So, bringing it down to brass tacks, what actual practical advice did Daniel offer for someone maybe thinking of moving or just wanting to get better at a language?
Well, his number one thing was immersion.
Right. Using it every day.
Yeah, actively using the language.
Yeah.
Watching movies, listening to things, maybe even this deep dive.
No, maybe.
Trying to have conversations, even keeping a journal in the language, just weaving it into your life.
And what about mistakes? People worry so much about making mistakes.
He specifically said, don't let that fear hold you back. His point was that most people actually respect the effort. They appreciate that you're trying to communicate in their language, even if it's not perfect.
That's a good reminder. People are generally kinder than we sometimes fear.
Yeah. And practically speaking, find a community.
Like a language exchange group?
Could be, yeah. Online, in person, whatever works. Just having supportive people to practice with can make a huge difference to your confidence and, how fast you progress.
Makes sense. So, was there one final piece of advice he shared, something that kind of summed it all up?
Yes, and it was really powerful, I thought. And honestly, it applies to more than just moving abroad.
Okay.
He basically said, don't wait to feel ready. You'll never feel 100% ready, and that's okay. Just go for it, be kind to yourself, and trust that you'll grow through the experience.
Wow. Yeah, that's really good advice.
It just cuts right to the heart of it. You can analyze forever, but sometimes you just have to take the leap.
And trust the process, trust yourself.
Exactly. And it ties together everything we've talked about, really. The initial struggles, the importance of language, but ultimately the incredible personal growth that comes from pushing your boundaries.
Yeah, stepping outside that comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
So, as you're listening to this, thinking about Daniel's journey, maybe it's worth asking yourself, what does feeling ready actually mean to you?
Good question.
Yeah.
Is it ever truly achievable?
Maybe not 100%. So perhaps the better question is, what's one small thing you could do? One step you could take today, maybe.
Yeah.
Towards a new experience or a learning goal.
Without waiting for that perfect elusive moment when you feel totally ready.
Exactly. Just something to think about. Anyway, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Daniel's experience and the real side of living abroad.